Hi guys, I know it's been a minute, 3 years, since I last uploaded, but I have a treat for y'all today. I will be tackling the first princess in the historically accurate Disney Princess series that I started designing and planning since October of 2019. I know we had decided on a different timeline and order of the princesses over on my Instagram, but I needed to start with someone whose design made me excited and was clear in my mind. And that princess was Mulan. Before we get into the research though, let's get to our doll base. Oh, here we go. This Draculara should do. I know her skin tone isn't quite right, and her face is a little more cute versus the warrior-esque, but I think she will suit Mulan. This is really a junker doll, as you can tell by these scuff marks all over her face, and we will have issues later over loose joints, but everyone deserves some love. I also have a lot of Draculara bases, and I need to use them for something, so here we go! So this will be a long video if I include every piece of research I came up with. It's a long video already without it. So, not to bore you, I will maybe include other tidbits throughout the video instead of just in this section specifically. And of course, I will include a link to my research document below with my sources, so if you want to read more, you can go there. Mulan. I know from the Disney movie and from pop culture knowledge that she is from China. It was actually based on a song from ancient China. So I started there with the original source material. This was called the Ballad of Mulan, which was believed to have been composed during the Northern Wei dynasty, which was from 386 to 535 AD. This is also the historical setting of the song during the military campaigns against the nomadic Rawran. The Disney version, however, was centered around a Hun campaign led by a villainous Shan Yu, who was created just for the movie and has no known real-life historical counterpart, that invades China by breaching the Great Wall. The Great Wall is to have been believed to have been built from as early as the 7th century BC. So, taking all of this knowledge, I decided to set my Mulan within the Northern Wei dynasty. Because this was so long ago and because of a slight language barrier, it was a little difficult to find anything on the status of women within this timeline and fashion. I did find some images though, so I will use these to base my doll off of. I did want to use the same colors Disney uses for each princess to keep it all recognizable, while also keeping in with the timeline. However, nothing I found said I couldn't use bright colors for Mulan. Even the fashion plates I was able to find images of had brightly colored designs, so brightly colored designs it is! So I did come up with a preliminary sketch. Some aspects of her clothes will change later due to various issues, but I do hang the sketch up so I can reference it as I'm working on the doll. I also always have images of Mulan up on my computer next to me while I work, or had one of the 2 Mulan movies playing while I worked on the doll to help me capture Mulan's fiery and strong essence. Now, I also wanted to include something that was important to the character, as well as include a couple of each character's companions in her design. With Mulan, that came down to her sword, Mushu, and Cricky. With this, I decided a doll-sized sword would be perfect, but for her companions, they needed to be a little more subtle. So Mushu will become a hair ornament, and Cricky will be in her design for the fan. So, let's get started with the accessories. Now, with the fan, I originally wanted it to be able to open and close, but with it being doll-sized, that idea got nixed very quickly. I did find these small popsicle-type craft wooden sticks, and I had some excess cardstock lying around from a past project. First thing I do is take 2 of these thinner craft sticks and try to make them movable with some slits, a couple pieces of scrap paper, and glue. But this is when I realized it won't work, and they subsequently snap off anyways. Now, I have the doll body close by so I can use her hand as a reference to see how big to make the fan, as well as an image of Mulan with a fan, which can be seen during the matchmaker scene, up on my computer to reference as well. Now, I mark where I want to cut the wood. And this is where it snaps off. Now with each piece separate, I use scissors to make the initial cuts. Now it goes without saying, please be careful with sharp objects, as I use scissors, an X-Acto knife, and needles with this customization. So I take my X-Acto knife and whittle the wood down to the lines I drew. Next, I take out these files I picked up and file/sand away at the wood to give it a more rounded end shape, so it's not so sharp and pokey, as well as refine the shape by going back and forth between the file and my X-Acto. After I'm satisfied with the shape, I now have two ends of my fan. I need to add the actual paper to it. I cut a strip of cardstock and accordion fold it as tiny as I can. On a separate scrap of paper, I measured how far apart I wanted the fan to be and cut my accordion paper to fit within that dimension. Now, I don't want my paper to be that long, so I cut off some more off the end before measuring it again with my wooden sticks. Once satisfied with the measurements, I take some Elmer's glue wall and a small paintbrush. I paint a thick layer of glue on the stick before affixing the paper to it, using a bobby pin to hold it in place while it dries. I repeat it on the other side and set the fan off to dry for a few hours. I come back to the fan, once it is dry, and refine the edges, cutting off the excess paper off the top. Then, taking my X-Acto and a nail daughter, I make holes in each segment of the fan. I originally wanted to just use the X-Acto, but it was proving difficult, and I was risk cutting myself, so I backed off and used my nail daughter to poke through and push the paper to make a perfect sized circle or hole. Next, I mix up a purple and dark blue and paint these on alternating sections. These colors I tried to get as close to Cricky's colors, but I feel the purple is too light. However, it works in the end. I set my fan aside to dry, adding a few final touches, but you'll see those later. Now for Mushu. I decided a paper decoration will work best on this small of a scale. So first, I grab a piece of red cardstock. Then, very carefully with my sharpest pencil, I pencil his outline in the correct scale using the doll's head for help. satisfied with this rough work, I cut it out. Next, taking some colored pencils, I color in his more defined features, keeping in mind that anything too small won't show up, just keeping to the big features. Once I'm done with that, I have this gold thread that I want to add as his mustache or his whiskers. I cut a length of it, and using Elmer's glue all, I add it to his face. Once that is dry, I cut it to length and then prepare 3 pieces of 26 gauge gold colored jewelry wire to add as the comb part. Using the glue again, I add thick drops to the back of Mushu and fix the wire inside each glue drop. Once that dries, I cut the wire down to size and Mushu is finished. Now for the clothes. First, I'm going to paint some of these pink triangles sewn to a piece of elastic to have a purple border. I first mark off the border to be painted with some masking tape and mix the perfect purple. I then smother that onto the fabric. Later I learned that the paper I taped this to protect my work desk actually stuck to the fabric. But this proved to be a good thing, as it shrinks the fabric and makes it kind of posable. The other parts of the clothes actually proved to be more difficult, and I don't have much footage because I would get aggravated and mess up even more. So I took some time away from the camera and came up with our clothes. I did have to take some shortcuts to achieve the look I wanted, so it's not accurate in how many layers she has on or anything like that, but I believe the look is accurate. Anyways, after the paint is dried, I remove the tape and cut the paper down so it doesn't show from the front. I wanted a small ribbon to use as a belt, but I couldn't find one small enough. I also wanted to accent with gold, so taking the previously used gold thread, I cut 6 lengths of it. Taking 2 pieces per strand, I braid it and knot it on either end to make my tiny belt. For her sword, I take those same type of craft sticks from earlier and pair them up to fashion her a sword, with some help from Mr. Superglue. Once that is dried, I paint the handle gold with a strip of black to mimic her sword from the movie. I later paint the actual sword part with silver paint, but you'll have to see that in future videos. Finally, it's time to look at her head. I paint her scalp black as I'm planning to reroot, but don't want any pink to peep out. Once that dries, I take this hank I still had left from my first ever doll custom. It is from the Doll Planet, and it's the nylon hair, and it's called the Blackest Night. My rerooting tool and a size 7 needle cut at an angle. Taking a few hairs from the hank, I slip it onto my needle and plunge it into the head. I was actually very happy with this rerooting experience versus my first one. My first one, I kept breaking the needles and eventually gave up. But I got through this entire reroot without my needle breaking. It goes to show that practice does make perfect, to not give up, and going slow helps. Once I've rerooted as much hair as I want, I take some tacky glue and get it all up in her head, making sure to squeeze the head around to ensure every plug gets glued. I set her head aside to dry over several days. Once it is, I come back and pin her hair back with a scrap piece of cloth, hair ties, and pins to protect it from MSC, otherwise known as Mr. Super Clear, which I spray all over her head and body while wearing a ventilation mask outside, and wait 30 minutes before prepping to pastel her pink body back to a skin color. Taking some green pastels that I know will help counteract with the pink skin, as complementary colors tend to cancel each other out, I brush it all over her face and head. After, I brush a more light yellow color over her face to bring it back to a typical skin tone, but keeping it light and as similar to her film counterpart. I repeat this same procedure to her body, making sure to get into the joints. Once I'm satisfied with the color, I spray her another time with MSC to prepare for the face-up. I prepare some pastels to use on her face, beginning to fill in broad colors, like pink for her cheeks, red for her lips, a light brine for eyeshadow, as well as white for overall face powder. Makeup was mentioned in the ballad that she wore it once she was home. I used the makeup Mulan wears in the matchmaker scene as a basis, but steering from the typical geisha makeup, which in Chinese history was reserved for the imperial courts and the courtesans. using a sharpened watercolor pencil and a light brown to sketch in her eyebrows, which ended up being more cousins than sisters. I also sketch in her other features. Once satisfied with my sketch, I go back in with black and bolder colors, filling in as much as I could. Once the colors stopped building, I sprayed again with MST. After doing this several times and messing up several times, I come to this for her face. It is not my best work, but I know I will get better with time. Once I get her head back on her body and fix her hair off camera, it's time to put all of her clothes and accessories on. here she is, my take on a historically accurate Disney princess Mulan. I'm actually proud of how she turned out. With as much trouble as I had, especially with not having customized it all in almost 2 years, I think it went rather well. This was my first time researching into a different culture to try and make something, as well as my first completed reroute, first time blushing a body back to a skin tone. Of course, there are things that I'll fix or add later to her design, like gloss lips and eyes and a silver sword. But I am happy with how she is. I did learn lots of things this time around, and hopefully I can implement those with the next HADP doll. Who is next? Maybe someone who is fairest in all the land? Don't forget to comment on your favorite part of this custom, like the video, and subscribe to see future doll customs. Bye guys, and have a magical day.